بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. We praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, under whose control is giving life and making to die. We praise Allah Ta'ala, who is the bestower of the endowments, the one that controls everything, including the prices of commodities that are high and the prices that are low. It is Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala who controls hardships and ease. Allah is the creator of the cure and the ailment. It is Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala who created Prophet Adam alayhi salam and made him be the first of the prophets. It is Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala who taught Adam alayhi salam, who created within the heart of Adam alayhi salam the origins of all of the beneficial knowledges. He taught Adam alayhi salam how to read and how to write. And then the message of Adam alayhi salam spread throughout the people, throughout the men, women, and the jinn. And then among these people, there were those that adhered and followed, and these were the pious people and the knowledgeable people. And among the people were the ignorant. Most of the people in this life are negligent, and very few reach the state of being perfect Muslims. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is the owner of absolute dominion, and Allah gives ownership, a temporary ownership, to whomever He wills, and takes it from whomever He wills, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And we ask Allah to raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the best of men. We hope, insha'Allah ta'ala, through these gatherings to attain great blessings. Because what you can get in a gathering of religious knowledge, in a physical gathering where the Muslims meet, what you can get in these gatherings, you can't get online. You can't get through a screen. Even though sometimes people, they will experience new knowledge. They will make notes. But it's not the same as being in a gathering of religious knowledge, because the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam explicitly mentioned that the angels attend the gatherings of religious knowledge, where knowledge of the religion of al-Islam is being taught. This knowledge, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala raised its status, and raised the status of the people, meaning the scholars here, who learned it for the sake of Allah and then taught it also. These scholars who have a very, very high rank, so none of us here are scholars, of course. We would aspire at the very least to be a tenth of one of the great scholars. Otherwise we are all lay people. Like our Shaykh used to say, describing some of the people nowadays. He'd say, مُتَعَلِّمٌ عَلَى سَبِيلِ النَّجَاةِ. Such and such person is a learned person. He's learned the personal, or she has learned the personal obligatory knowledge enough to be safe. Enough to hope to be safe in the hereafter. As for the actual scholars, now very few of us have seen actual scholars. As for real scholars, then there is, you could say, between us and them a distance of what is between the earth and the sky. They were the ones that defended al-Islam. I mean, how do we think it reached us in little old Halifax? How do you think this knowledge about the Arabic language, or about the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the details of ayahs and hadiths that were revealed in Mecca and in al-Madinah, how do you think they reached us? It was the effort of these scholars that spoke different languages, that went to war with the people of misguidance, sometimes physically and sometimes or mostly with the pen and with the tongue, bravely going into gatherings and warning against the people of misguidance so that lay people like us wouldn't be confused. These are the people of true merit, the scholars of al-Islam, who defended the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and taught the people about the Creator, tabaraka wa ta'ala. So what a good path this is. What an honorable path this is. Nobody here can claim truly, even if a person was to claim falsely, nobody can truly claim that they gain honor through anything other than Islam. It doesn't exist. So a person does not gain honor or real, true glory through other than al-Islam. That's why, as was narrated by al-Hakim, Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu, the second caliph, he said, "Inna kunna adhalla qawm," that we, when we used to be idol worshippers, we were people that were amongst the most degraded people. Inna kunna adhal, yani dhalil. Kunna adhalla qawm. We were of the most degraded people. فَأَعَزَّنَا اللَّهُ بِالْإِسْلَامِ. And Allah granted us honor through what? Al-Islam. فَمَهْمَا نَطْلُبُ الْعِزَّةَ بِغَيْرِ مَا أَعَزَّنَا اللَّهُ بِهِ أَذَلَّنَا اللَّهُ. So, however much, whether little or a lot, if we strive to attain a perceived glory or honor through other than al-Islam, Allah will reduce us once again to being degraded people. Meaning what? Glory is through al-Islam. Nothing else. No worldly commodity like money or fashion or a large, let's say, property which a person has for a worldly gain. None of this is true glory. True glory is through al-Islam. One of the pious in the past said, "Laysa sharaf sharaf al-mal." Sharaf, which is actual honor, which many people don't have nowadays. He said, "Laysa sharaf," true honor is not the honor of wealth. That's not really honor. He said, "Ash-sharafu sharafu deen." Religiosity, being a perfect Muslim, this is something that is honorable. So when it comes to the people of honor, the highest among these people are the scholars of al-Islam. So even though we don't have a scholar in the gathering here, we remind each other about the status of scholars because Allah praised them in the Quran. By this we would grow closer to appreciating what they did. By this we would grow closer to the heart of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for indeed he was the one that encouraged people to acquire knowledge. He was the one that, because he is the source of the knowledge of the religion in this nation, it is because of him that the scholars emerged. In the religious texts, you see that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala revealed in the Quran, شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. In this ayah, Allah revealed that Allah is a witness that there is no God other than Allah, and likewise the angels are a witness. So these pure creations of Allah that do not sin, they are a witness that there is no God but Allah. وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ. And the people of knowledge, the scholars of Islam. Some of the interpreters of the Quran, they said that in this ayah there is a proof of the great favor of the scholars of Islam. Because Allah mentioned in this ayah himself, the angels, and the scholars of Islam. This shows that they are honorable creations of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And Allah revealed in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ, meaning that those that fear Allah the most, and that fear drives them not to disobey Allah. Those that fear Allah the most are the scholars of Islam, the pious scholars. Allah revealed, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Say, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, are those people that are scholars like the ones that are not scholars? This means of course not. Allah revealed in the Quran, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises the rank of the people of knowledge. Not just the scholars here, the Muslims among us who Allah eternally willed for a path to be facilitated for them to acquire the Islamic knowledge and then implement it. Allah revealed that Allah raised the rank of the knowledgeable people, and specifically now the scholars. Allah raised their rank very, very highly. You look at this example, when a person hears a hadith like the following, then how would a person accept to deprive themselves from one, learning, and even if they don't become a scholar, then at least teaching what they know? Because we are living in a time which is a dire situation. The Prophet ﷺ said, من سلك طريقا يطلب فيه علما سلك الله به طريقا من طرق الجنة. Whoever makes a firm intention for the sake of Allah. So, by the honor, the glory, the blessings of Ramadan, even now, if we were to renew our intention for the sake of Allah, to acquire religious knowledge, that we want to have this thirst to be people who have a share in the knowledge that the Prophet brought, alayhi salatu wassalam. Otherwise, why did he bring it? Other than for people to acquire it and be knowledgeable and gain that honor, implement it, and have those high, lofty ranks in paradise. So he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, whoever has the firm intention and then embarks upon a path looking for religious knowledge. I mean, how many stories have you heard about people that would say that I made an intention to go and seek the truth. Even non-Muslims sometimes. You see them saying that I asked God. God, show me the truth. And sometimes you have people who think that they are Muslims but they have a bad belief, but you will see them saying later on that I asked Allah, Ya Allah, show me the truth, and so on and so on. And then eventually you'd see that through the mercy of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, because of this firm conviction that they had to find the truth, Allah showed them the truth. And there are numerous examples of this, from the companions all the way until nowadays. Allah guides whom He wills, however He wills, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So here the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever follows or embarks upon a path seeking Islamic knowledge, Allah will facilitate for him a path to Al-Jannah. The paths to Al-Jannah are many, but all are mutual in that they require learning the personal obligatory knowledge and then implementing it. And then among the good deeds that a person would do, there are many paths. And then he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in the same hadith, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضًا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. Even these pure souls, these pure creations, that are the angels, if they see a person, whether this person is in his 20s, or in his 30s, or in his 60s or 70s, or it's a woman, a Muslim woman. She is in her 30s or in her 70s. She leaves her house, she steps outside of her house to acquire religious knowledge. She has this she still has this thirst for the religious knowledge. She wants more and more religious knowledge. It beautifies a person, especially if they implement it. When the angels that are roaming see this student of knowledge, they are sinless, remember? They are sinless. They lower their wings for the student of knowledge. Because this person is embarking upon a path, even if it's to come to a religious lesson in the same town. But most people, they neglect this opportunity, where the angels who are already accepted slaves of Allah Ta'ala would lower their wings for a person. وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمِ, he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمِ لَيَسْتَغْفِرُ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. The scholar of Islamic knowledge, the pious scholar, the angels that fill the skies, they ask Allah to forgive this scholar if he had some shortcomings. The angels in the sky make dua for this person. وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and also those on the earth, the people on the earth, the angels on the earth, the pious people on the earth. وَالْحِيتَانُ فِي جَوْفِ الْمَاءِ. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, because Allah informed him of this. Even the fish, he said, فِي جَوْفِ الْمَاءِ, deep, deep, deep in the sea. Some parts of the sea, some parts of the ocean, if you go down a certain distance, it's pitch black. But there are organisms there, there are fish that reside there, that have souls. The Prophet ﷺ said that they make dua for this person. When a person hears that, sometimes you say to a pious person, make dua for me. Or you say to somebody, make dua for me. Don't forget me. Please make dua for me. It's al-Jumu'ah, or you're traveling, or make dua for me. But you have here an opportunity to learn, and then to teach, and then to have even these animals, these things that are not accountable, Allah grants them the ability to make dua. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَالْحِيتَانُ فِي جَوْفِ الْمَاءِ. وَإِنَّ فَضْلَ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ. And indeed, the status of a scholar compared to a normal worshipper, a normal Muslim, the difference in status is كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ لَيْلَةَ الْبَدْرِ عَلَى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. The status of the scholar compared to all the lay people is like the status of the full moon. Imagine that on the 15th, when it's a Badr, compared to all of the smaller things in the sky, the moon outshines, very clearly outshines them, because its light is so beaming and luminous and it's great. Like that is a scholar compared to all of the other Muslims that are not scholars. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَإِنَّ الْعُلَمَاء وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. The scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. وَإِنَّ الْأَنْبِيَاءَ لَمْ يُوَرِّثُوا دِينَارًا وَلَا دِرْهَمًا. And the prophets, they did not leave behind an estate of wealth, golden coins and silver coins. No. وَرَثُوا الْعِلْمِ. Rather, they left behind knowledge. That is their inheritance. فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. And whoever is able to take that, whoever Allah enables to have a share of that by attending religious gatherings, whomever Allah has eternally willed would get a share of that, then indeed this person is very, very, very lucky. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ وَأَهْلَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرَاضِينَ. That the angels in the skies and the pious people on the earth, حَتَّى النَّمْلَةَ فِي جُحْرِهَا. Even the ants, he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that are under the ground, in their burrows. وَحَتَّى الْحُوتِ. And even the fish, again in another narration, even the fish, لَيُصَلُّونَ عَلَى مُعَلِّمِ النَّاسِ الْخَيْرِ. That they make dua for the person, and a scholar is not mentioned in this narration. What's mentioned in this narration is any Muslim person who is able to teach some of the religious knowledge that they know. That could include every single one of us. It might be a neighbor, it might be someone at work, it might be a friend, a person who teaches the good, meaning the Islamic knowledge. This is a great opportunity, especially in this time when so many people do not know the acts of worship properly. Never mind the matters of belief. That is an even more dangerous matter, but especially at this time. So there is this opportunity for all of us to organize ourselves, what we hear, what we know, and then to relay it. Because then we would be doing what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. So glad tidings be to the one that busies him or herself with the beneficial knowledges of the religion. Such a person would have sought out and requested the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and followed the practices of the people of the past. In the past, in the gatherings of religious knowledge, the Muslims, they would narrate hadith, sayings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, a lot more. And from that they would extract rules. Later on, scholars came and they started to jot down the rules and leave out the hadiths. Why? Because this was easier for people. But But originally, the scholars would mention the hadiths, and parts of the hadiths would be answers to questions. Somebody would ask a question about prayer. So the scholar would relate or narrate his chain and say, the Prophet ﷺ said, and he would take part of a hadith which is appropriate to the question, that's an answer, and he would give it. And that was it. So they wouldn't go outside the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the origin, the Quran and the hadiths. Later on, the scholars expanded upon that, and because they saw that the motivation or the determination of people to acquire hadiths and learn them and then to extract information from them, this determination weakened. So they put the hadiths to the side, and then they just started to bullet point rules. So people would memorize rules. Rather than memorize the 6 books of hadith and learn them with a teacher, people started to expand upon the religious knowledge through books of fiqh. So originally, the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ were one of the 2, let's say, sources, the primary source being the Quran, of course, and then the second being the hadith. So what you learn from the hadiths is the true belief in Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. As you would know, we've mentioned, for example, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. Allah existed and nothing other than Allah existed. And like that we explain. We learn about the promise of Allah. We learn about paradise. We learn about the threat of Allah, what Allah threatened with, which is punishment in the grave and hellfire. We learn about the pious and the misguided. We learn about the creation through the hadiths, the creation of the skies and the earths, the angels. We learn about the different prophets, about the people detached from this world, the pious Muslims. We learn about great speeches that were given by scholars of the past from other nations that our Prophet told us about, alayhi salatu wasalam. We learn about the kings amongst the Arabs and the non-Arabs. All of this comes from the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the scholars who took an interest in hadiths, and they worked with them, and they sifted out that which some people tried to inject, which was false, and they clarified and they purified this. These were the people of hadith, that defended the religion of Islam. When new ideas came about, when people from the non-Islamic countries, they started to accuse Muslims of things, and the scholars, they found the counter-arguments, the proofs against those matters in the hadith as well as the Quran. But you see, the Quran, in terms of the amount of words that are in there, this is much less than what is narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the scholars, some of them commented in the past and said that the Quran, it is more in need of, in terms of explanation, the Quran is more in need of the hadiths than the hadiths are of the Quran, because there are ayahs about which there are maybe 20 or 30 hadiths about the context they were revealed in, about the person that said it, the names of the companions, what their relation was to the narrator, what the situation was, who heard it, all of this. So those ayahs are explained by hadiths. But remember, the scholars, even some knowledgeable people nowadays, they would say, and they would make us all think about our situation. One of the matters that I was told about, that some people who are attributed to the Islamic knowledge, we think well of them. Allahu A'lam if they've reached the level of scholarship, but they've been studying and teaching for like 40 or 50 years. So perhaps in their field they would be a scholar. And they are from Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. When they meet a person who is introduced to them as a person of knowledge, what they ask is, ماذا تحفظ بعد كتاب الله? That's the starting point. They ask, so what have you memorized after the Quran? They don't even ask, have you memorized the Quran? They ask, look, what have you memorized after the Quran? Not just Juz Amma, mashallah, which is good. But they say, what have you memorized after the Quran? Which books of Hadith have you learned with a teacher, not self-study? This is what they ask. So the people of Hadith, like al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, al-Imam Malik, for example, the great Huffaz, al-Haafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, these great scholars that were phenomenal human beings. These people protected the religion of al-Islam. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق لا يضرهم من خالفهم. That he said there will always be a group of people among my nation, among the Muslims, who will be upon the truth. They will always be upon the truth. Nobody will be able to harm them, in the sense that nobody will be able to eradicate them. In every era they will exist. The scholars said, these are the people of Hadith. These are the scholars of al-Hadith. Other scholars said, yes, these are also the awliya, the pious people. They will exist no matter what. Allah has eternally willed it. The Prophet said it, alayhi salatu wassalam, and he gets his information from Allah, from revelation. So it's true. These people were the ones that defended the way of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they exerted an effort, a great effort. They traveled by sea, they traveled by land, through deserts, and they implemented, after learning and writing down, sometimes on leather, sometimes on palm tree leaves, and they would gather those and load their animal, and then they would take it with them. And then, because Allah has created life such that people, they lose their eyesight, they start to, when they get older, they might not have the same, let's say, mental ability. They might not be able to read, they might not be able to understand. So these people then used to commit these hadiths to memory. Nowadays, we are falling very, very short in that, because we're complacent, because we have the electronics. We'll just swipe and it's there. And so people don't commit things to memory anymore. These people, they exerted a lot of effort. It's said about al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhu. One of the scholars said that he traveled the world twice in acquiring religious knowledge. And he said that the amount of hadiths, in terms of knowledge, that he heard repeatedly, so there were some things he only heard once. And there were some hadiths, a collection of them that he heard repeatedly. These ones were 10,000 hadiths. The ones that he heard repeatedly. And when we say that he traveled the world, it means that he traveled in the Middle East. For example, you can imagine the scholars of the past, from Mecca to Al-Madinah, to Jerusalem, to Damascus, to Baghdad, to go beyond the river Jayhun, to go into those lands like at-Turmuz, to go to Samarkand. And like this, they would travel, spend a long time. You know, subhanallah, when I was in my last year in the university, studying in the university, there was a hadith that we all learned, we heard from our teacher. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said that in the future there will come a time in which the knowledge of the religion will be readily available. That people, that's what the hadith means, people won't have to exert a great effort. Which means for a lot of people then they don't appreciate it as much. Like look at the example of al-Hajj and al-Umrah. It used to be the journey of a lifetime in the sense that if people were going to al-Hajj and they said their wada', they said their farewell to you, you had the feeling in your heart that they're going now, they're going to travel by foot or on an animal, they're going to go on a ship or a boat, it's going to take them months to get there, and this might be the last time that we see them. That's why people used to reserve this journey until they got a little older. They made sure that their matters were in order, their children are married off, they're stable, then they'd go. And then perhaps they wouldn't come back. And that's why then people would appreciate, a lot of people, they would appreciate a lot more the journey of al-Hajj. Like this, the religious knowledge. So in that hadith, it said that many people in the future, they will have the hadiths, he said, my hadiths, readily available to them. And he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَهُوَ جَالِسٌ عَلَىٰ أَرِيكَتِهِ, while a person will be sitting on his, you think of it as a settee or a sofa or a couch. He said, while a person will be sat on his arika, and he will be hearing the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Like you turn on the TV, I'm not saying that everything on the television is reliable, but you turn on the TV and it's there. You flick on your phone and it's there. That effort that a person would have had to exert in the past, it's not there. Jabir radiyallahu anhu, one of the companions, he traveled from al-Madinah to Egypt for one hadith. We all know about that, don't we? But let's think about that. For one hadith. For example, I could say to you, قال عليه الصلاة والسلام إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. That's one hadith. And you've heard it. Simple. He traveled for one hadith from al-Madinah, took him a month to get to Egypt, and he heard the hadith because he had heard it also before. It's not like the first time he was hearing it, but he wanted it through a shorter chain. This matter of hearing something of the Prophet ﷺ via a shorter chain is almost lost nowadays between the people. But he did that. He heard the hadith, he remained on his animal, and he turned back to al-Madinah. That's something phenomenal. That's something that should, live etched into your heart, that this is the type of determination and motivation that the people had in the past to hear the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, one such person whom the whole world knows about in terms of what this scholar gave to the knowledge of al-Hadith, such that they considered him to be an extraordinary person. He was one of the scholars of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah who lived around 800 years ago. This is al-Imam Yahya ibn Sharaf an-Nawawiyy, al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, who I'm sure you've all heard about. He was somebody who took a special interest in the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm not just here to tell you about his biography or the biographies of the other scholars, just to mention them, but so that we can have a type of connection with them, so that we can, even if it's slightly, aspire to be like them. Once we look at their situations, we look at what they used to eat, how they used to sleep, how they used to spend their day. Did they used to work? Wait a minute, we work. How did they get by not working? Or did they work? Or, okay, what did they do? So their work was driven by them earning enough to be able to buy something, a manuscript like paper, which they could write on. That's why they worked. But then when would they eat? How would they eat? Well, this is why we look at this. Otherwise, if there's a disconnect between us now and the pious people of the past, then all of these great habits will be lost. We do not innovate things into the religion of al-Islam that are not connected to its principles. We build things upon the principles. So we look back to the people of the past and how they did things. One of the scholars, he said that al-Haafidh, an-Nawawi, he was someone whom Allah gave a special ability to, and that Allah created special blessings within some of his authoring. One such authoring was a book known as Riyadh al-Salihin, which means the gardens of the pious. In this book, al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, he made it easy for people in that he deleted the chains, the long chains of narration. He just mentioned the companion's name, and then he mentioned what the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he tried to keep the hadiths from Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So he gathered hadiths like this in many different chapters, from sincerity to sins of the body and other things like that, sunnahs of al-Dhuhr, many things. He authored this book, and in it he put more than 370 chapters. This book, which inshallah we're going to go through it, this book, some of the scholars said that it is, after the Quran, among some other books, it is one of the books that every Muslim household should have. But that comes with, obviously, a disclaimer and a warning that one should not get this book without then learning it with a teacher, and one should not read in it. Like they shouldn't read in any book by themselves and deduce judgments. That's not the way. It's not a novel. It's not a text in which critical thinking can be applied, where a person uses their own analyses and they reach their own conclusion. No, it's not like that. This is hadith. This is an honorable knowledge. So the reason why this book spread so much, such that people would say about it things like this, that it should be in every household, is because they said shiddatu ikhlas al-Imam al-Nawawi, because of the let's say the firm or the sheer strength of the sincerity of al-Imam al-Nawawi. And you'll see why. You'll see through his character. This person, he really trained his heart and his body, his nafs. And he was somebody who in the foreground, he was heading for the hereafter. This person really knew what he was doing. Al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, his name was Yahya ibn Sharaf. Muhyiddin was his title. Like you have Qamaruddin, Salahuddin. Yeah? Like this was his title. He never married. He was somebody who was detached from the world. And like him, actually, there were many people, many scholars like this. Some of them not even scholars, right? They had enough knowledge, but they were pious people. Remember, the word scholar and pious person are not synonymous. A person might be a pious person and he's not a scholar. And a person might be a scholar, but he's a major sinner, he's not a pious person. So these two words are not synonymous. It was said about al-Haafidh an-Nawawi that he followed the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a perfect way. That what he saw, or things that he saw that required patience from him, and things that he did, things that he engaged in, his habit, as you're going to see, of acquiring religious knowledge and then teaching it and then learning it and so on, such that it's as though he didn't spend a single moment except worshipping Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. He was born in Nawa. Nawa was a small village in Hawran, which was to the south, it is to the south of Damascus in Syria. He was born in the year 631. So if it's 1445 now, 631, you could say it's about 800 years ago. One of his students, called Ibn al-Attar, because a student likes to speak about his shaykh. He said, when the shaykh, he speaks about an-Nawawi, when the shaykh reached 7 years of age, and he said his father told me this, my shaykh's father told me this, that when Yahya ibn Sharaf an-Nawawi was 7 years old, he was once asleep on the 27th night of Ramadan. He said suddenly, in the middle of the night, his father, he said, told me, in the middle of the night he woke up. And he woke me up. He woke his father up. And he said, Ya abati ma hadha al-daw alladhi qad mala'a ad-dar. Father, what is this light? And it's in the night. The lights are off. He said, Father, what are all these lights that are filling our house? He said that his worry, like this, it woke up the household, woke everybody up. And his father said, but we couldn't see anything. And so his father said, I knew that that night was Laylatul Qadr, the 27th of Ramadan. He said that I knew then that this night surely was the night of Al-Qadr. And he knew then from that point that his son was special. One of the awliya, who was the person that took an-Nawawi by the hand to put him on the path of becoming one of the awliya. This is his teacher saying, Ra'aytu al-Shaykh, even his teacher calls him, I saw the Shaykh. He said, Ra'aytu al-Shaykh wa huwa ibn 10 sinin. I saw him when he was 10 years old in his village, Nawa. And the other children, I saw them picking on him, trying to force him to play with them. And he would cry, he would run away crying because they were trying to force him. وَيَقْرَأُ الْقُرْآنَ فِي تِلْكَ الْحَالِ. And when they were trying to force him and he would run away crying, he would start reciting the Qur'an. He said, this person among the awliya, he said, فَوَقَعَ فِي قَلْبِي مَحَبَّتُهُ. It was at that moment when I saw that he's being oppressed in this sense by those children. They're not accountable, but he's being oppressed, but he's reciting the Quran, he's resorting to the Quran. He said, in my heart, my love for him, or rather love for him fills my heart. He said, so I watched him and I saw that his father makes him work. His father takes him to the shop to pass on the trade. So he takes him to the store, but he doesn't actually buy and sell, he just recites Quran. He doesn't let buying and selling, if he does buy and sell, he doesn't let it stop him reciting. He buys and sells, he's 10 years old, with the permission of his father. And he buys and sells, but he doesn't let anything distract him from the Quran. See, he had a good upbringing. He had a mother and a father, and people around him that saw his potential, and then they supported him in that. They didn't direct his attention towards something else, something worldly. And look, 800 years later, me and you 800 years later, who's going to remember one of us? May Allah Ta'ala grant his paradise. Subhanallah. But 800 years later, we know al-Haafidh, an-Nawawi. Even if you don't know when he was born or when he died, you might think, yeah, I've heard that name, an-Nawawi. Al-Haafidh, an-Nawawi. But the Islamic world, in terms of people who take an interest in the Islamic knowledge and follow it up, they know an-Nawawi. He's like, hey, you've got to know an-Nawawi. How can you not know an-Nawawi? So he said, and look, Allah puts things in the hearts of some people who are not even connected to that person. This pious person, he said, I went to his teacher. I didn't know who his teacher was, but I found out. I did some investigatory work and I found out who his teacher was. So I went to his teacher and I said to him, take care of this child, take care of Yahya. And he said, who are you? And what makes you say that? He said, إِنَّهُ يُرْجَى أَنْ يَكُونَ أَعْلَمَ أَهْلِ زَمَانِهِ. Listen, it is thought, it is hoped that he is going to be among the best of his time. One of the great things, one of the great matters of his time. وَأَزْهَدَهُمْ. And he's going to be among the most ascetic, like the most detached people, eating little, sleeping little, drinking little, worshipping Allah. So he said, his teacher said to me, are you a fortune teller? He didn't know who he was. He says, أَمُنَجِّمٌ أَنْتَ? Are you a fortune teller? He said, La, I'm not a fortune teller. إِنَّمَا أَنْطَقَنِ اللَّهُ بِذَلِكَ. Rather, Allah made me utter these words. Sometimes this happens. The pious people, they find a feeling in themselves. It's just there. It's an unnerving, one might even say, it's an unnerving feeling. They feel, they have a feeling that might even agitate them until they get it off their chest. And this is sometimes they're words in the form, or wisdoms in the form of words. News that comes, like, for example, Sayyida Amina Umar, this waliya who lived about 90 years ago in Harar, in the village of our Shaykh radiyallahu anhu. She saw Shaykh Abdullah when he was 7 or so years old. And she said, now, she was in Ethiopia, in a tiny village, where they eat little, sleep little, drink little, worship Allah a lot. When there are always extraordinary matters happening because there are awliya there. She looked at him randomly, she didn't know who he is. She said, هَذَا سُلْطَانُ بِلَادِ الشَّامِ. She said, this boy, who was 7 years old, Shaykh Abdullah, she said, he is going to be the Sultan of the lands of Sham, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and so on. And eventually Shaykh Abdullah, when this is like now 80 years later, Sheikh Abdullah was in Beirut and his students were spreading in Jordan and Syria and everywhere and beyond. Another one of the awliya, he came and he started to call Sheikh Abdullah as-Sultan. Just like that. Why? Allah put it in his heart. He started to call him the Sultan. Like the one that has taken charge. When 80 years ago, what made a Sayyida Amina Umar say, هذا سلطان بلاد الشام? Suddenly another one of the awliya says, هذا Sultan. Go to a Sultan. Go ask the Sultan, he would say. You want to learn religious knowledge? Don't ask me, go ask the Sultan. Yeah, sometimes this happens where these people are made to utter things. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala puts it in their heart. Al-Haafidh, an-Nawawi, he said, when I was 19 years old, my father took me to Damascus. And I stayed there in a famous madrasa where the scholars would stay. Al-Madrasatu al-Rawahiyya. And he stayed there until he died actually. And this place was a special place. It still exists today. Before one of the great markets, Al-Suq al-Hamidiyya. Is it al-Hamidiyya or Hamadiyya? Syria. Hamidiyya? I think Hamidiyya. Maybe I'm mistaken. Is Hamidiyya or al-Hamadiyya? Al-Hamidiyya, I think. So an-Nawawi said, بقيت نحو سنتين لا أضع جنبي بالأرض. An-Nawawi said, for 2 years, I remained while acquiring religious knowledge and implementing it. For 2 years, I didn't put my side on the floor. I didn't lay down. For 2 years. Now you might think, yeah, come on. No, these people are literally telling the truth. He said, لم أضع جنبي لنحو سنتين على الأرض. I didn't put. What he would do was, al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, he would sometimes he would stand, lean on something, he would sleep for a little bit, and then when he feels like he's losing his balance, he'd wake up like you do. You feel like you're falling over. He'd wake up, and then he would continue. He used to, some said, attend 16 sessions a day. 16 different teachers. He used to, before those sessions, prepare for them, then attend them, then in the night, he would memorize them, and then he would author as well. Some of the scholars mention about an-Nawawi that if you were to take the pages that he wrote and spread them out, compare them to the days of his life, then the pages that he wrote were more. How do you get that? Unless you have an extraordinary ability, unless a person has been given a special ability, unless a person has reached piety. He said, وَأَتَقَوَّتُ بِجِرَايَةِ الْمَدْرَسَةِ. And I would only eat from the trees, the fruits of the trees that had been specified for the students of this madrasa. I wouldn't eat anything outside. He said that I memorized at-Tanbih, a huge book in the Shafi'i school. A huge book. Like if we were to start with the Mukhtasar of Shaykh Abdullah, and then Matan Abi Shuja', and then the explanation of Matan Abi Shuja', the explanation of Al-Ghazi, then An-Nihaya, Liwaliuddin al-Basir, then Fath al-Wahhab, then after that a few books, then you get to At-Tanbih. He memorized it in 4 months. 4.5 months he said I memorized it. And then another huge book, Al-Muhadhab, in the school of Imam al-Shafi'i, he memorized it. It means he learned it with the teacher, he understood it and he memorized it. And like this, he spent time with the pious people. One of his mashayikh, he was known as al-Maghribi, al-Kamal Ishaq al-Maghribi. He stayed with him, and this teacher of his, he saw the great ability of his student. So he kept him close, took him under his wing, made sure that he did all his work, memorized and so on. And Nawawi said, وَأَحَبَّنِي مَحَبَّةً شَدِيدًا. this teacher of mine, this honorable teacher of mine, he loved me a great deal. And he made me repeat the class. So in the past, they used to have somebody give the class, and then there would be a person, one of the top students, he would repeat the class. He said he made me repeat the class. Al-Haafidh an-Nawawi said that I performed al-Hajj in the year 651. And I went with my father. We went in Rajab. So imagine that they went in Rajab, through Sha'ban, through Ramadan, through Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, then Dhul Hijjah. So this was what Hajj was like. You had to take 6 months out and you might not come back. Settle your debts, say your goodbyes. Insha'Allah, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And if Allah wills, we'll return here. Or, masha'Allah. So he stayed in al-Madinah al-Munawwara for about a month and a half. And then while he was there, he became very, very ill. Very, very ill. He got a fever. And this is special, being ill in al-Madinah. And they said that not once did he complain. And he was young. Not once did he complain. And then one of his father said, فَلَمَّا تَمَّ الْحَجِّ, when Hajj was complete, وَوَصَلْنَا إِلَى نَوَى, and we returned to Syria, وَرَجَعَ هُوَ إِلَى دِمَشْقَ, and my son went back to Damascus after visiting the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, performing al-Hajj for the first time ever. صَبَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْعِلْمَ صَبًّا. It literally means Allah made it be that knowledge began to pour onto him, pour and pour and pour. That he was given so much knowledge by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala after that particular point. He continued acquiring knowledge, worshipping Allah, praying and fasting, and doing many, many acts of worship, such that some scholars said that he would attend about 12 lessons a day, and he would have them explained to him and memorize and so on. And then he would also author in the night. It is said that he would eat his food, because eating food, chewing takes time. He would put his food in some water or some other type of liquid, and he would mix it and he would drink it. You can imagine a person nowadays, they might have a plate, they might have they'd have the main meal, and then they'd have something on the side, and then perhaps something else, another plate which they dip into frequently based on need, and they drink and they top up and so on, which could take maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on the type of person. Compare it to when you wake up in the morning to do the school run in Ramadan. You eat nothing. And you think, MashaAllah, I can even maybe after Fajr, maybe I can even sleep for another 15 minutes, because all it is, put your shirt on, put your socks on, you're out the door. Right? Al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, he knew the true extent of this life. He would put his food into something like a container like this, and then drink it in one go. Wait 24 hours, do that again. Keeps you alive. So Al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, this is the type of life that he lived. He did not used to waste any time. I'll summarize the end now. In the day or in the night. Whether it was making dhikr, or it was learning or teaching, sometimes perhaps also he was authoring. He said that, or rather the scholars, they say that he was not just a scholar, but he was a pious person as well. In what sense? So among the awliya, they have ranks. And the scholars mention about al-Haafidh, an-Nawawi, that he gained one of the highest ranks before he passed away. They say that, one of the scholars, he said that Shaykh Salih al-Mu'ammar Abu al-Qasim al-Mizzi, he said that I once had a dream and I saw lots of banners, and I asked the people, what is going on? And it was said to me in the dream, al-laylata quttiba Yahya an-Nawawi rahimahullah, that tonight an-Nawawi has been made the qutb, which means the leader of the awliya, the best of the awliya. It's a very, very high rank. He said, so I woke up and I had never met this man, an-Nawawi. He said, so I didn't even know who he was. And I hadn't even heard of him. So he said, coincidentally, I went into the city one day and I mentioned this to a person, that I saw someone called Yahya an-Nawawi. They said, this is the Imam, this is Shaykh Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyya. He's over there. He's right now, he's sitting and he's teaching, or he's taking questions, or... So I asked him, okay, give me the direction. He said, yeah, it's over there. So he said, I went and I found this man sitting, and around him there were some people. So my eyes fell on him. I saw him, and when I looked at him, his eyes met mine, and then he gestured like this. He went like this. And when he did that, I found it a bit strange, because I don't know him, he doesn't know me, he went like this. And Nawawi left the gathering and he moved to the side, and I followed him. Because, mashallah. So he said, Nawawi did this, and I followed him. And he took me to one of the gates, like one of the outer gates. And as we were walking, I tried to talk to him, but he wasn't letting me talk. He kept walking. And he said to me, "Uktum ma ma'aka, wa la tuhaddith bihi ahada." And Nawawi said to him, don't mention to anybody what you have with you. Meaning, what you saw, don't mention to anybody what you have seen. ثم رجع إلى موضعه ولم يزد على ذلك. Then he returned, and now we just left it at that. He returned and he sat down as he was. He said, وَلَمْ أَكُنْ رَأَيْتُهُ قَبْلَهَا وَلَمْ أَجْتَمِعْ بِهِ بَعْدَهَا. And I had never met an-Nawawi before that, and I never met with an-Nawawi after that either. And like this, there are many examples of his piety. One of the scholars, one of the awliya, he said that I was ill. I had an illness in my leg, there was an ailment. And an-Nawawi visited me. And when he sat, he started to speak. You know, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala creates blessings in the speech of the pious. They speak, it hits you differently, as they say. They speak, and imagine 100 people could have said that thing to you. But the pious people say, Allah supports that with blessings, and it attacks the heart in a different way. So, he said, al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, he started to speak to me about patience. Be patient for the sake of Allah. The Prophet said it's good to be patient. You get rewarded. He said, every time he mentioned something new about patience, the pain in my leg, it was reducing and reducing and reducing until it completely left. This is because of the pious people. Things like this happen. So al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, mashallah, there is a lot more that also we can say about him. The last thing that I will mention is that he was a follower of the Ash'ari school of thought. The Ash'aris, who are a part of Ahlul Sunnah. So Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the Muslims, they are Ash'aris and Maturidis. We usually follow, in most of our matters, creedal matters, we follow the Ash'ari school. But we love the Maturidis. And in some things, our Shaykh, he said that I'm with the Maturidis on this. So, the Maturidis and the Ash'aris together, they are not two separate groups, let's say, or factions, or no. The Ash'aris love the Maturidis, and the Maturidis love the Ash'aris. They are named after certain scholars who fought against the people of misguidance in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, and in Baghdad. In two different places. They lived at the same time, they were contemporaries, but they never met. So all the scholars that came after them to identify themselves as on the Prophet's path, they said, we follow al-Ash'ari. So they were called Ash'aris, Sunnis, Ash'aris, or Sunnis, Maturidis. al-Haafidh an-Nawawi was an Ash'ari scholar. His books are full of the sayings of the Ash'aris when it comes to speaking about Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When some people nowadays, wal-'iyadhu billah, will say Allah has a hand, or they will say Allah has a foot, or Allah has a face. We're not allowed to attribute these things to Allah. Allah revealed in the Quran al-wajh, these Arabic words, al-yad. And in some hadiths, Allah revealed things like al-harwala. The Prophet said these words about Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But we're not allowed to take them literally and say, well, it means hand. Oh, but not like our hand. Now, this is an insult to Allah to say hand. Or to say, Allah has a face. No. al-Haafidh an-Nawawi, he clarified these matters according to the Ash'ari creed. That's why the Wahhabiyya don't like him. Secretly, they don't like him. Some of them outright have said that he had problems. Even though they heavily rely on his books, because he was in a league of his own in his time, mashallah. Like I said, to this day, the people are benefiting from his books. He left books behind that are spread in the East and the West because of his sincerity. And you'll see, inshallah, tomorrow when we start going through the opening chapter of his book. The opening chapter, it relates to sincerity. Sincerity and then also insincerity. So inshallah we will discuss that tomorrow. Allah yubarik bikum. Let us stop by reciting al-Fatiha sincerely for the sake of Allah. Not just out of habit. Sincerely for the sake of Allah. With the intention that we are worshipping Allah. And then after we're done, inshallah, you all make a dua that we send a likeness of the reward that you attained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to Shaykh Abdullah and to al-Haafidh an-Nawawi and the scholars of al-Islam. So let's recite al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط اللهم أوصل مثل ثواب ما قرأت إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وإلى الأنبياء والمرسلين وإلى الصالحين والأتقياء خصوصا الشيخ عبد الله الهرري رضي الله عنه وأرضاه والحافظ النووي. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم استرنا فوق الأرض وتحت الأرض ويوم العرض عليك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ارزقنا التقوى. اللهم أدخلنا الجنة. اللهم أجرنا من النار. اللهم توفنا مسلمين وألحقنا بالصالحين. اللهم أخرجنا من رمضان سالمين غانمين يا رب العالمين مغفورين. اللهم توفنا على كامل الإيمان. اللهم أرنا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في المنام هذه الليلة وفي كل ليلة يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Let us say لا إله إلا الله and الصلاة على النبي. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.